Hey, everybody. My next guest is Tim Murphy. Tim is a financial guru, according to Mike Anderson. Mike said, you got to talk to Tim. He is too kind. And so, Tim, I know this is a wild,
Yeah,
crazy time. So thank you
sure.
from all of us for taking the time to do this. Really what we wanted to do is Tim has a lot of background in the financial sector from a lot of different angles. And so I wanted to maybe, could you give us a 30,000 foot view of who you are, what you do for those who don't know you?
Sure, no problem. So I am an originating branch manager for CNF Mortgage Company, division of CNF Bank. I've been in the business now for 35 years. I manage about 42 employees. I also run a small loan officer school. I teach 9 different classes for the general public, and then at the same time, I still originate loans, so in the marketplace. So having a blast. And on the other side of the world, I am a business owner. I've got rental properties, commercial properties, that kind of thing.
Excellent.
That'd
Well,
be me.
I think what we're going to do is today we're going to talk about unvarnished truth. The brutal reality. I think there's some sugar coating going on out there, and so I thought, from the financial standpoint, let's get these guys solid advice, information about their finances that we can
Sure.
talk about. So why don't you tell me, in the financial world, what are you guys expecting to come out of this coronavirus? I know we're early stages, but what are you expecting to happen in the next weeks and months to come?
Well, unfortunately, we're looking at the next 60 to 90 days. We're looking at a slowdown in the marketplace. Unfortunately, from that standpoint, that means heading into a recession, heading into really a little bit of tough times. And it gives us the opportunity really to, in my opinion, reflect on where we are, reflect on, what's worked well, what hasn't worked well, and then we can position ourselves for the future. So we're looking at it as kind of a step back. It's a forced kind of reflection time, which is, to me, an awesome time. However, on the other side of the coin, we do expect, a lot of our employees, folks that have lost their jobs, we expect to see a correction in the stock market, which has already occurred. We expect to see some credit, unfortunately, decline from a score standpoint and people getting overextended. And at the same time, just some fear, if you will, some folks just not realizing, hey, this is not that bad. We've survived the Great Depression, the Great Recession. We've survived 9/11. We're not going to, this is the end of the world. This is just a matter of, it's a small correction. It's a small bump in the road. We will get through this.
Gotcha. So what advice do you have? I mean, maybe we'll start, with the people who are maybe going to be first affected. We're looking at a lot of closures. We're looking at a lot of people getting laid off. What are you advising people that, are losing their jobs or, don't know if they're going to make their next mortgage payment? What are you
Sure.
advising people to do right now to weather this hopefully short storm, but to weather it?
Well, first and foremost, I've told all my clients, number one, really don't go in and make large mortgage payments, large additional payments, principal curtailments, that kind of thing. Let's go back and let's get into just making the minimum payments, try to keep your cash in a strong position. Of course, get rid of the extra items that really aren't any value to you at this point in time. Cut out some incidentals that you were spending money on before. You don't need to be throwing your money away at this point in time. Honestly, most people have a little bit of cash in their pocket. It's good to have something to fall back from that perspective. If you currently have a home and you find yourself falling behind, the key is really to communicate to the mortgage company, to your servicer immediately, because there will be steps put in place by the federal government, and it has already been discussed. In addition, the mortgage companies don't want to take your house. They don't want to foreclose. Quite frankly, they want to work things out. So we've been through this with the short sales, with the fiasco of 2008. So communication is really the prime. Making minimum payments is the key. Watching what you do expense out right now is critical. And we call it cash flow economics. Watching the dollars go out. I don't care if the rate's 21%, if the payment's only $100. Don't be throwing in an extra $500 or $600 at this point in time.
Yeah, because what we don't know is how long this is going to drag on, is what you're saying. So
Correct.
yeah, so and
Yep.
I think a lot of people are starting to look at how can I cut, monthly expenses on needed, unnecessary things. Okay, I think that's great advice. What about, going to the lenders at this time? I know the Fed put the interest rates really low in the U.S. Also here in Canada, we're seeing the same effect overseas. What can you suggest about a credit line or something in place from the
Sure.
banks? What's your advice there?
Well, we highly recommend really 2 things. Number one, we want you to examine your current mortgage position, because ultimately you may be able to improve your financial situation. You may be able to do a cash out refinance. take a little bit of money, lock in the low rates that are out there, number one. Number two, I've got clients right now who are actually going from a 15-year mortgage to a 30 because they want to extend the term out. They want to reduce the payment going out the door. Number three, we highly recommend if you don't already have it in position and you have equity to pursue a home equity line of credit. The credit unions and the banks are well in position to provide that. With the Federal Reserve in the U.S. cutting the rate down to zero, it means your home equity line is tied to that prime rate. And quite frankly, it's extremely low. And having that fallback position may prevent you from having any kind of damage to your credit score.
I like that. Yeah, that's some real solid advice there. What about credit card debt, credit card payments? What's your advice around those kind of things?
So at this point in time, I've had a bunch of my clients have actually called the credit card issuers, and they've actually gotten increases on their limits.
Okay.
They have found that, we're in a situation where we may need a little extra help. They've called the banks, and the banks have actually been willing to extend them out. Number one, so if they have currently a $5,000 limit, they've been able to increase them to a higher limit to have that availability. Quite frankly, I tell you to make the minimum payment at this point in time. We can always catch it up down the road, but having a little extra cash in the pocket, most people don't understand the critical point is just making the payment. Everybody thinks you have to pay it down and get rid of it. It's not the case. If you maintain that minimum payment consistently every 30 days, your credit score is not going to be damaged. And once we get out of this little predicament, easily to restore. It really is. But having that availability, it's just crucial. It really is.
That's interesting. Is there any chatter about the banks and their stability, as far as weathering this storm as well? I know we had a financial crisis. I know we saw things in Greece where banks were collapsing. And, what is the forecast? So I've had people asking me, should I buy gold? Should I buy silver? Should I, and I'm like, you know what? Let me get Tim on the line here. I don't know this stuff. So fill us in on.
First up, yeah. I'm not a stock, a predictor. I'm not a gold, silver. I always believe in a balanced portfolio. Quite honestly, I look at it from the standpoint of, having a balanced mix of some precious metals. I'm, of course, a big real estate fan for me.
Yeah.
I look at it from having some stocks, et cetera. But I will tell you, there are a lot of my clients right now who are asking me, is it time to buy? You're going to laugh. Disney stock. Is it time to buy Carnival? They're looking at it from the perspective of everything is significantly on sale. And quite frankly, in a few years, we'll look back and say, wow, now I own 100 shares of Disney that I bought at X dollars. Now it's worth Y. There's some pretty wild things out there. But before you start investing in stocks and bonds, invest in yourself. Yeah. Have your cash available, be able to make your payments, be able to attack things on time.
Yeah, I think that's solid advice. Let's go to the next, I think, burning subject is let's talk about business economics. A lot of our shops are really considered an essential service because we're in the transportation realm, but we're seeing things like plant closures. We're seeing a lot of disruption. Is there things from a business standpoint that we can do to help employees? Maybe we have to lay employees off. Maybe we have to, talk to them about pay cuts out to weather the storm. What advice do you have for the managers, for the business owners out there that are trying to navigate this situation?
So think about it from this perspective. Your employees are truly our assets. And it is difficult to bring new employees on board that don't know how your service is run, how your shop works, how they do the job, et cetera. So a lot of the managers that I've talked to, employees have said, look, employees would prefer to be either reduced time, right? You get paid maybe a 30-hour week versus a 40-hour week, take a pay cut with the understanding that down the road it's going to come back versus laying somebody off or putting them fully on unemployment. The biggest fear would be to have 20 employees, lay off 10 of them, have the shop repop, and then all of a sudden you don't have the employees in position to do it. Otherwise, if you can work with all the employees and say, listen, we all need to take a little bit of a haircut. We all need to take maybe a little bit cut back on hours. We all need to put ourselves in position so that we can, A, right, weather the storm, and B, when the market comes back, we can be able to tackle this and destroy it. Keep in mind, this is only for a short period of time. This is not the end of the world, right? So this is going to be for the next 30 to 60 days, and then everything is settled, which appears to be what's happening if you look at the other countries that have gone through this already. You look at China, you look at December, and now they're not reporting any cases at all. You're looking at what, January, February, March, 90 days, right? So we've been in the process probably 30 days at this point in time. 60 more days, we'll be out of this. When it comes back, it's going to be a wave. We've got, let's face it, you've got to have transportation.
Yeah.
You want to have dependable vehicles. And so you're going to have this big surge back, and you're going to look at yourself saying, wow, I wish I had not laid off half of my production team. So hours cut back, reduction in pay, and ready, communication with your employees. It's just the critical part. It really is.
I agree with that 100%. I think that's some really solid advice. And I think people, and especially employees in this time, would probably be quite understanding of taking a little bit of pain, spread the pain across the whole chain. And that also shows that they're team players. And really, there's probably going to be a lot of bigger organizations. We've seen this where they're dropping their people. They don't have that communication, like you just said, which actually creates an opportunity to find more people. So when it does pick up, you have them in your roster. So I think that's some sound advice. What are you hearing from a governmental standpoint? Are you seeing that there's going to be any relief measures for individuals, for businesses to help them through this?
We've actually heard a couple of different things. Of course, we've heard some of the Small Business Administration, being able to extend out low-cost loans. That's actually in the works. That's being discussed, number one. Number two, as far as the banks are concerned, quite frankly, the banks are looking at their loans, their commercial loans, they're outstanding. They have, and there's some workout right now. There's some ability to reduce their expenses. Let's face it, their cost of funds have dropped dramatically, and they're actually approaching. I got a call the other day on a commercial loan, and they approached me about dropping my rate 0.75%, and I was kind of thrown back a little bit. I'm like, well, you know what? Just it tied my loyalty up. There's no question about that. Yeah. The other thing that we're looking at as a business, overall, the banks want to know that you are financially secure and that you're able to weather the storm too. So I would reach out to your banker. The banks have already been through the capitalization. They have a certain minimum requirements, which the government's enforced over the last 12 years. So we're in a strong place there. So I'm not worried so much, knock on wood, of course, as the banks are going to go out of business. But at this point in time, everybody is just sitting back, and the government's doing the right thing. They're putting the brakes. They're saying, let's get this virus through the system. Let's clean our things up. And if we don't overload the systems, we're all going to get through this and work through it.
I think that's excellent advice. So just in closing, is there any advice that you would have for us in the industry, for the people in the trenches, for the owners, managers, those kind of things? What are some thoughts that I never even thought to ask you?
No, excellent. I always think about three things. First of all, we've got to be flexible. We've got to communicate. We've got to be realistic. A lot of people allow fear to overcome their lives. And what's fear? False evidence, right? Appearing real. So we all know that things aren't crashing. We've got our health. So I tell people, stay positive. Take this opportunity to really reflect on where you're at. This is a great time to, we probably don't do this enough, but to set our goals or put our plans in place, see how our structure working, how can we improve the situation overall. And then, one of the greatest, speakers, I think it was Dale Carnegie, always said, he said, tough times never last, right? But tough people do.
Yeah.
And we as Americans, we get back and step up to the plate and we make it happen. And I think we will. We have the resolve. We have the initiative. So just stay strong, stay positive, stay focused. That's it.
My man, thank you so much for taking the time. I know this is going to be well appreciated, and thanks for your generosity and sharing all your thoughts.
God bless.